Today we're going to cover Day 2 of the 100 Years' War. Yesterday we covered the reasons behind the 100 Years' War. Conflict over secession, conflict over Flanders, struggle for national identity, and who the French land actually belonged to. Today we're going to talk about the battles. We're going to talk about the advantages of both sides. We're going to talk about the key player that emerged out of the 100 Years' War. And we're also going to talk about the results of the 100 Years' War. Let's start with the phases. There was 4 phases. First phase, 1337 to 1360, it was just straight up battling it out. Phase 2, 1369, 1399, France begins to take control. Campaigns were longer and even more fierce. Phase 3 happens from 1415 to 1420. England takes control, tries to occupy French land. In Phase 4, 1422 to 1453, Joan of Arc emerges and France wins. You'll understand why that's in quotation marks. They technically win. I'll show you why. There's 2 advantages to the French side. France has 16 million people. They have more money. They have a bigger army. French army is 50,000. England's 32,000. What England didn't have in numbers, they made up in strategy. England hit hard, quickly. They had quick raids. They stole what they could, and they destroyed everything else. What they would also do is they would capture these enemy knights and hold them for ransom in hopes that they would get more money and maybe more supplies. So what they did was they made up in strategy what they didn't have in numbers. So they learned how to use less people in a better way. Now, all that's good and dandy and fine. But really what the 100 Years' War is most remembered for is who emerges. The person that emerges is known as Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc is one of the most famous people from not only the Middle Ages, but from all of history. But why is she important? She is the main reason why the 100 Years' War was discussed. She's the daughter of prosperous peasants. Peasants that are a little bit better off than other peasants in France. Now, there is a story, and nobody knows for sure, but she supposedly had voices in her head that told her to go to the king of France and help get England out of France and basically push them back. What you need to understand is that females were not allowed in the French army. So she came up with a solution. She says, the only way that I can be get into the French army and get to the king is to dress like a man. So she did. She dressed like a man, changed her voice a little bit, and she became King Charles' most charismatic and feared military leader of the French army. She brought inspiration and national identity to France's army. She was captured by the English on a raid in Paris due to her dress and her voices. She was burned at the stake in 1432 AD. Now, the statement always has said, or the historians have always said, well, what happens if she had told them she was a female? Nobody knows. That's one of those hypotheticals you could have said. Nobody knows. But because of her male dress, because of her voices, she was burned at the stake. Now, what does burned at the stake mean? It means you go to the center of a town, so the whole town can see you. They tie you up. They put hay at the bottom, and you're still alive. They don't give you any pills or anything like that to make you go to sleep. They put hay at the bottom, light the hay, it burns all the way up. You know what happens next. So what happens after Joan of Arc gets burnt? Despite Joan's capture and burning at the stake, France's advance continues. France continues to push. In 1450, Due to France's advance, English had lost all major centers, all major forts, all major trade centers, but one. There was no treaty, okay? There was no treaty. France technically wins, but there was no treaty. So the war never ended. There was a cessation of hostilities, a ceasefire. So, hypothetically, if the 100 Years' War, could it still go on based on the 100 Years' War? Sure. Yeah, because there was no treaty. There was only a ceasefire. France and England, they still are rivals, technically. They're still going at it over supremacy of Europe. They're not fighting. They're not rivals. They're not battling it out on the on the field of battle, but they still are rivals in Europe. France keeps its independence. Okay, they also, it's the first time for permanent standing armies in Europe as well, and foot soldiers and the longbow become more important due to the 100 Years' War. So today we have talked about 4 phases in the 100 Years' War. We also talked about the advantages of France and England. We have talked about who was Joan of Arc, why was she important, and what did she do to get into the French army. And we also talked about the end and the results of the 100 Years' War. This ends the 2-day lesson for the 100 Years' War.